While the crypto market sold off recently, everything else around this market is up in a huge way, including, of course, tokenization and stablecoins. Tokenized RWA value is up 10.5% across the board, almost $4 billion. Stablecoins also up almost 5%, 293, almost $294 billion. But also when it comes to public networks, RWA value is up 12+% in the last 30 days. We just added another $1 billion to this value, and we are now well over $21+ billion. And yes, of course, across the board, when it comes to transfer volume and even stablecoin transfer volume, we are seeing a huge boom. Almost $6 billion for RWA 30-day transfer volume, up almost 38% in the last 30 days. Stablecoin 30-day transfer volume, $3.59 trillion, up 14% nearly in the last 30 days. Regardless of what happens around this market price action-wise, we are witnessing extreme growth across the board for things that are 100% the focus, because tokenization and stablecoins are booming in a huge way, not even just within crypto, but around TradFi. All of the big banks jumping in a huge way. We love to see this. Now, when it comes to stablecoins specifically, we know monthly transfer volume is almost over $3.7 trillion. I've been tracking transfer volume because, again, this is use of stablecoins on these public networks. Now, when we think about transfer volume, especially on the monthly view, we do know that August was a huge month. September was slightly under August. We are watching October right now, nearing the halfway mark of $1.5 trillion. We're watching this halfway get to the value of some of these previous months. The main thing that I'm focused on is how big December of 2024 was, at over $4 trillion. And I'm wondering if we can overshadow those levels. Now, again, like I said, whenever we're thinking about transfer volume, right? It is such a crucial piece of the stablecoin market because this is showing us how much money is moving through stablecoins. We know that stablecoins have been booming in a huge way, especially on a lot of these great public networks that we talk about. I mean, just take, for example, Stellar as an example. RWA value is up almost 20% in the last 30 days. Stablecoin market cap up about 24+%. And then if we're thinking about just the adoption itself, we could see the adoption here around RWA value. It's going crazy. Stablecoins are growing in a big way. I mean, USDC is up 24+% in the last 30 days. So again, the growth right now around some of these public networks is insane. And then if we're thinking about RLUSD, well, RLUSD's growth has been nothing short of incredible. Over $800 million now tied back to RLUSD. We're over 839+ million, up 15+% in the last 30 days. Monthly transfer volume up 60, almost 4% at almost $5.6 billion. This is insane to witness. Again, RLUSD adoption is heating up in a very, very large way. Now, beyond this, let's think about a few things, because when we are looking into news, we are watching as major banks announce significant stablecoin initiatives. I mean, guys, it's crazy to watch as TradFi embraces stablecoins, but not just stablecoins, but these public networks. This is wild. We continue to see more and more increased adoption around the biggest banks in the world. I said back in August of 2023, we are going back 2+ years ago. I asked the question, how do I envision what's coming? Every single major bank, every single major nation, every single dollar, everything will be tokenized is essentially what I said. I started with every single major nation having their own currency. We talked about this even with CBDCs. Now it's starting to shift from CBDCs to stablecoins. Regardless of that, we also know every single major bank will tokenize their reserves. Guess what? JP Morgan already started to do so back in June. JP Morgan made a huge move with JPMD, which is essentially a deposit token. And then also, by the way, JP Morgan put out an article on their website on September 4th, what to know about stablecoins, where they completely broke down stablecoins and the future of stablecoin initiatives, just going off of like the Genius Act, for example. Now, on top of that, I said that the world is going to be dominated by digital monies. Anything and everything of value will eventually be tokenized in time. Again, going back to tokenization, well, we know there is a massive shift happening in tokenization where we are starting to see stocks being tokenized. Institutional funds are being tokenized. Commodities are being tokenized. Private credit is being tokenized. Corporate bonds, government bonds, U.S. Treasuries, everything that you can possibly think about is being tokenized. That's leading to every single thing of value moving on chain. The biggest thing about the global financial system is that we are moving towards a world that is not dominated by a currency controlled by one entity. Because again, what we are witnessing is one of the biggest shifts in financial history. Moving away from traditional processes to digital automated processes where we also need neutral bridge currencies like XRP or even XLM. Now, what's crazy about all of this is Subjective Views recently posted a video clip on X, and we have new. A few days ago, during a fireside chat at the Federal Reserve's Community Bank Conference, U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent urged community bankers to go on the offense by embracing emerging technologies like blockchain and stablecoins to reclaim market share from larger institutions. He highlighted that major banks such as JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America are unlikely to serve the broader ecosystem of small businesses and local needs, so community banks could white label their own stablecoins. Bessent also tied this to attracting younger customers and boosting financial literacy, noting that crypto and stablecoins are drawing in new demographics that traditional big banks may overlook. Check this out.
But how do you see the role of technology evolving in the banking sector? And what policy levers do you think that we could use to help ensure that community banks can compete effectively in the new technology environment?
I think it was very important. If I look, one of the biggest regulatory changes from the Biden administration to the Trump administration, there have been a lot of them, is our emphasis on AI and digital assets. AI in the Biden administration was governed by diffusion. They were going to treat it somewhat like the nuclear program, keep it in a box. They were going to hand it to Google, Microsoft, Meta, and that was life. On the other side, digital assets had a near extinction event with Wells notices going out to many companies, banks prohibited from opening accounts. And I think the fact that we're creating, the term is sandbox, where there's a lot of experimentation, where there are a lot more offerings, and for community banks not to be locked in, that they have to use like one of three dominant service providers, that for a wider range, supply will push down price, choice will inform. Community bankers are, and the owners, whether they're family-owned banks, whether the shareholders are usually in the vicinity, and I think that they will be laser focused on the new technologies. And just like with the credit card companies, I think that new payment rails will exist, And I think we have to make sure that it's open for everybody. JP Morgan, Bank of America may have their own stable coin, but I think it's very easy, and you'll hear, you have two great participants, that you will hear that for community bankers to join together, whether it's in some kind of a cooperative program, whether, but you can private label these under your own name, and it doesn't necessarily have to increase deposit beta. The other thing, because we value community banks, we are going to make sure that any new regulation is done in a safe, sound, and not abrupt manner, that there will be a transition and everyone will be able to understand it and participate in it.
And essentially what this is confirming is that every single major bank is now going to flood in either one, launching their own stablecoins or white labeling their own stablecoins through major initiatives that are already ongoing in the space. One crazy thing that comes to mind is the fact that we are watching as some of the biggest banks move in on the stablecoin boom. We know that recently on October 9th, Citi just backed stablecoin firm Bank, and if this firm does sound familiar to you, well, it should, because this is the same firm that was interviewing Monica Long, the president of Ripple, back in early 2025 regarding how big banks were tapping into Ripple. Also, this is showing us that Citi is taking stablecoins very serious. Major U.S. banks are stepping up right now to the plate because, again, crypto and digital assets in the U.S. are becoming a much bigger... I would argue that it's becoming a huge shift in real time due to regulations being more favorable, also opening the doors for these big banks to tap in. So they kind of have all the obstacles clearing in front of them to tap in to this market. And stablecoins are just an easy way for them to tap in and utilize a huge piece of the crypto industry, which is also why we got this big announcement on the 10th, one day later, which was big banks exploring launching a stablecoin linked to G7 currencies. The group of banks said the stablecoin initiative would explore the benefits of digital assets in bringing new products to the market. And if we remember, look at these big banks: BNP Paribas, Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, Deutsche Bank, and Citi. Some of these major banks are already confirmed partners of Ripple. Not every single one of them, but most of these big names are already working closely with Ripple. Then when we are thinking about the G7 countries, a lot of these G7 countries are already starting to, grow around Ripple, meaning more so Ripple's presence in these areas is at all-time highs because of the recent moves in the U.S., the recent case getting, completely cleared up. So at this moment, it kind of feels as if Ripple is in the right area at the right time. Because again, if we're thinking about some of these recent moves, like for example, Scott Bessent confirming all of these big banks are going to jump in, and even all of these big community banks, well, we go back in time just to a recent announcement on September 22nd from the managing director of the UK and Europe at Ripple, where she basically confirmed that to coincide with President Trump's state visit to the UK last week, I had the honor of attending a roundtable in Downing Street alongside the UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves, US Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, as well as representatives from a number of leading UK and US financial and crypto firms. Oh yeah. Oh, it's definitely just a coincidence, right? This was regarding a huge opportunity for closer cooperation between the US and the UK on digital assets, a partnership which has the potential to set a template for international cooperation in our industry, all regarding the footprint that Ripple already has around the US and the UK to not only innovate, but also collaborate regarding supporting blockchain adoption in the UK. And yes, this 100% involves tapping into blockchain tech, but also stablecoin initiatives. We already know that earlier this year, Ripple was addressing the UK launching their own digital pound. We also know that when we first got the announcement of ROUSD, the Digital Pound Foundation, which Ripple is also a part of, said RLGBP sounds very interesting and good, with a winking emoji, and that happened back in the beginning of the year. When we think about what's happening here, almost everything is revolving around Ripple. It's crazy that some of these announcements, almost everything that we're witnessing in this space, is everything that Ripple is already a part of, or, there's some sort of connection back to Ripple. It's crazy to see this. This is also why I say that there's no coincidences. Like, this is all planned, in my opinion, and always has been planned since day one. But with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video.